Righto, I am now recording locally. Gay men's car.
All right, now when I count to John McClane saying obvious wrong buzzer noise, please snap or clap. 3, 2, 1.
All right.
Beautiful. All right, I just dive straight into it.
Now I have a machine gun. Ho, ho, ho.
It's the podcast that hates you back. Not Well, There's Your Problem, but the other one. Hello and welcome to a special holiday episode of Kill James Bond. And we're in a bad mood,
It's
listeners.
the bad mood podcast. It's the podcast that's upset with you.
I'm actually
That's
doing
right.
great.
We're upset with you personally.
I'm having a lovely time thus far.
Why are we upset?
Don't text us. And also do text us. Text us more.
You haven't been texting us enough.
You haven't
That's
been
right.
texting us the correct amount.
We're all annoyed by various things, apart from Devon, who is fine.
I'm doing fine.
But we got together to record Die Hard because the most tedious people in the world, right, will go, oh, do you know Die Hard is a Christmas movie? You ever think about how Die Hard is a Christmas movie? My favorite Christmas movie is Die Hard. And so...
And then everyone
Isn't-
under the age of about 40 goes, what the fuck is Die Hard? That came out in 1980 something.
First of all, how
and
dare
so-
you?
and so-
Yeah, the thing about this is that Die Hard, whether or not it's a Christmas movie, I have absolutely no fucking interest in litigating whether or not Die Hard is a Christmas movie. It's a movie that takes place at Christmas, and they mention Christmas a number of times. I don't know if that makes it a
Yep.
Christmas movie. Greater thinkers than I have considered this. But what I do know to be a fact is if you ask someone what their favorite Christmas movie is, and they go, oh, it's actually Die Hard, you can kill them with a gun, and it's legal.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
That's legal. That's legal. I mean, my first note here in my big notebook for these is Die Hard a Christmas movie? Fuck you. I don't
you.
care. Like not to get to like fucking KJB cinema here, but like you and the movie are in a sort of like collaborative process of constructing meaning, right?
And
it
you've
can
done
be
it
a
wrong. You
Christmas
suck.
movie.
Fuck you.
It can be a Christmas movie if you like approach it as that. I don't think that's a particularly interesting lens through which to view it, so to speak. But like, yeah, you can make it a Christmas movie. My Christmas movie has fuck all to do with Christmas. Like whenever it was Christmas, my family and I would watch The Great Escape, which is kind of a downer. Like Steve McQueen diving headfirst into barbed wire is not very sort of seasonal, and yet it persists as tradition. So
The one thing that Die Hard is, though, is a good movie. And if you're looking for an excuse to watch it, fine. Fine, I can think of worse.
Yeah, to be fair, it is well made. Yeah.
I
enjoy
enjoyed it
this
a lot. The other problem about Die Hard for me is that it's also a movie about which people have like written quite seriously and in depth. And so me as Alice Analysis, right, I'm quite happy in sort of like the small tide pools of The Man from U.N.C.L.E. or James Bond, where people don't like, yeah, they interrogate them, not like movie by movie like that. Whereas here, I'm like, oh shit, fuck, I'm gonna have to say things about this movie that other people have said things about, and then people can go and look and compare, and they're gonna realize I don't know what I'm fucking talking
Yeah, but
about.
as I explained to Alice in the pre-show matter, this show is slop for hogs. Like, people who have serious opinions about film don't listen to this podcast. You listen to this podcast to hear us talk about com and like do bits
true.
and jokes about the vault and stuff. Like, yeah.
People have been thinking about Die
boy,
Hard. People have been writing about Die Hard for quite some time. And, like, there are better thinkers than I out there. But thinkers, I think all the fucking time. And I'm dumb as shit.
Yeah.
Like, this is meaningless. This is
I tell you what,
nothing.
though, Hans Gruber
Philosophy,
is a man who
worthless.
wants to get in the vault. He really
He would love
wants to get in the vault.
There's a good vault in this film.
Yeah, what kind
That's
of
right.
the fucking vault zone, actually?
It's Christmas Eve. It's Los Angeles. John McClane, New York Police Department detective, is on a plane, and the first shot we get of him is him sort of like clenching the armrests because he's nervous, which I like. The guy next to him gives him this like sort of like self-help tip. If you're nervous about flying, you should like once you get where you're going, you take off your shoes and your socks and you make fists with your toes, and this will like help you not be anxious or whatever.
Or like get over jet lag or whatever it is. They feel refreshed.
Yeah.
He has a gun on the plane and he smokes in the airport.
Does?
The 1980s.
Yeah, he goes, "Don't worry about it."
Very much the 90s.
And I was like, "Cool, sick."
There's a shot like 10 minutes later where a heavily pregnant woman is like, "I can have a glass of champagne, right?" And her boss goes, "Yeah, it's fine." So it's a different
100%.
time. 1988. This was, and I have a theory that this will come back to.
First, we go to Nakatomi
Alright,
Towers, right? Which is a big like skyscraper across town. It's like a Japanese corporation. They were doing Rising Sun shit. John's wife separated. Holly is there. She gets hit on by this Chad called Ellis. And she's
Ellis isn't a Chad though. That's the
He's
thing.
not a
Ellis
Chad.
thinks he's a Chad.
He looks like a Chad
but,
meme.
like,
he's like big and
That's
jacked and
true.
has a beard. Like,
but he's ridiculous all the time because this movie is sort of like every bad guy in this movie, apart from the main one, is a different vision of like dipshit masculinity that you don't want to emulate.
That's right.
And so Ellis is a yuppie more than he's a Chad. He's like one of those guys who watches American Psycho religiously now, imagines themselves being.
Yeah, Ellis is like a deals genius. That's his thing. He's also one of those kind of guys that looks like fundamentally wrong with a beard. I don't know what it is about him. It just doesn't sit right on his face.
he's like the opposite of Jonathan Frakes.
Yeah, some guys, you grow a beard and it's like, spot on, perfect. But this guy's like, get rid of it, man. Get some stubble, maybe.
Meanwhile, after John's finished his nice cigarette and playing with his gun in an airport, he's on his way out. A blonde woman runs past him and he turns to ogle her. Man after my own heart, my notes say. He meets a guy called Argyle, who's his limo driver. Nakatomi Plaza have sent him a limo to bring him to the Christmas party.
Yes.
Argyle.
And
What a guy.
we established some proletarian credentials, right? Because,
Yeah, we do.
He says, Argyle says, "I've never driven a limo before," and John McClane says, "Well, that's all right, I've never ridden in one before." And the next shot is him riding up front in the limo.
It's so funny that he is up front. It's so good.
Yeah, it's great. And this tells you two things about John McClane, right? Because another key fact here is that Argyle is black. There are a lot of black characters in this movie. It's something that's like quite positive about it. This tells you John McClane is of a like working class background and he's not racist. And these
Despite
are
being a
advancing
police
to
officer.
sort of like
In New York City, of all places.
He's the one. He's the one.
He's the good cop.
He is a blue collar. He's a blue collar cop, which is a sort of like increasingly economically implausible archetype. And he's not racist, which is again sort of like
Laughable.
this is a combination that it's setting out.
So Argyle pretty quickly like susses out John's deal, and he's like, "Oh, you're here to see your wife. You're separated. Like she moved out here for your career. John didn't support her." There's this line where Argyle's trying to figure out why John let her go, and Argyle makes a joke out of the fact that she might have been abusive, which I like felt quite uncomfortable
Yeah, I wrote that down.
Yeah,
Aged poorly, certainly.
but anyway, they get to the Nakatomi building, and Argyle's like, "Well, look, man. Obviously, what you want to do is run in there and like, you know, kiss your wife and make up and everything because you've not seen her in 6 months. But I'll tell you what, I'll hang out in the parking garage. If it goes wrong, give me a call, then I'll find you a hotel." It's nice of him. Like,
True, homie.
It's nice, and they've like established a rapport on the drive over there, which is good. So he goes in, and the office of Nakatomi Plaza, the foyer is like very sort of like brushed marble sort of thing.
they're doing Rising Sun shit. Like they've even got a computer in the lobby, which is scary and gay and ethnic.
And the computer is also a reminder that like, hey, you're about to get divorced, brother.
Oh yeah.
Because he searches for his wife on the computer, and she only comes up under her maiden name, Gennaro, Holly Gennaro instead of Holly McClane, because feminism and like sort of corporate bureaucracy have like interceded between this blue collar cop and his wife.
They took the kids. They took everything from me. They took my family.
I don't have
It's
that.
very. It's a very neat sort of little like emasculation of John in that moment.
Yeah. Holly's not
but-
with him anymore because he keeps posting transphobia on the internet. It's at this point that I noticed and wrote down something quite interesting about Bruce Willis, which you wouldn't really see in a male lead actor these days, which is that he's balding. And I'm like,
Yes.
it used to be acceptable in the 1980s for men to just kind of naturally go bald, as men do, which, by the way, listeners, is fine. However, these days you will very rarely see it in a leading man. But also, at the time this film came out, Bruce Willis wasn't the kind of action star that we know him to be now. This was at the time.
He was a comedy guy.
Yeah, this was deliberately like quite unusual casting. People were like, what, Bruce Willis, the guy from Death Becomes Her, is going to be that kind of iconic trans film, which we'll have to watch at some point. He's going to be in this action film. I don't believe it. So yeah, I guess maybe that's part of it.
Because there was an 80s view of what an action hero looked like.
Yes.
And that was, it was Arnold Schwarzenegger or it was Sylvester Stallone, two guys which this movie independently makes fun of.
Yeah. And Bruce Willis is buff in this, but he's not like unattainably buff. Like he's about as buff as Dev is normally.
Thank you immensely. First of all, I wrote that down. I was like, this guy's not like that much larger than me. To be an action hero. But there's something else about him that I really appreciate, and he's just got like this sort of general sense of good-natured confusion about him.
Yes.
Like every time something happens to him, he just like smirks himself and he's like, "All right then, California."
I question whether it's good-natured because what we
relatively so.
We immediately see some homophobia.
Yes, we do. But
in this economy,
I really want to focus on this. He gets up to the party because they're having an office Christmas party. This is where like Ellis is like sort of hissing on John's wife, and he runs into a guy who like says Merry Christmas or whatever, kisses him on the cheek, and he sort of like smiles and shakes his head and goes like, Jesus fucking California. And it is homophobic. It's unarguably homophobic. However, the idea is like, I think the movie is trying to get you to like him somewhat successfully by making him like smile and shake his head and sort of like go, wow, okay, whatever. You can argue about how much malice there is in that. But for 1988, that's like remarkably tolerant.
I find it to be almost completely maliceless because this is the exact same response he has to the last like running past him in the airport to hug her boyfriend. Like he's just sort of got this general sense that this is like what California's like.
The people, people show affection openly, whereas they don't in New York.
I didn't even pick up the homophobia to it. I just thought it's like
people
like be affectionate over here, I guess.
It's homophobic in the sense of like in the sense that the movie put it in there to convey California as a place where this happens. Like I think if you made
not
this
like New
now,
York, which is famously not gay at all.
Well, exactly. But I think if you
certainly wasn't any gay shit going on.
I think if you remade this now, there would be a pronouns joke, right? And but I don't think you would have a sort of like a protagonist respond in the same way. I don't think you would have John McClane be like smiling but using the Zzer pronouns, right? Whereas that's kind of the way this is played, and it's like. Yeah, he just goes along. He's an average guy. He's an everyman, and he just sort of like smiles and like makes it work.
We meet the boss. Mr. Takagi, and he takes John to go and meet Holly in her office. She's temporarily not out, so John catches Ellis doing a little bit of cocaine. I love this guy's cocaine acting.
He's a great cocaine actor.
Yeah, he's very effective at looking like he's on cocaine. It's really good.
And Ellis sort of like taunts John. Well, first of all, Takagi gets a very interesting line, which I did pull as a drop. And this will also tell me how good the levels on the drops are, so do note that. But Takagi says,
Pearl Harbor didn't work out, so we got you with tape decks.
And this pulls into a theme, right? Pearl Harbor didn't work out, so we got you with tape decks. This is Rising Sun again, but now as a joke.
Yeah, it's kind of fun that he's the one who makes that joke.
What it is like a perfect demonstration of the way in which Hollywood sort of like moves past its own errors. Like okay, Japanese Zaibatsu rule didn't happen. So now we just sort of like joke about it and go on to next thing. It's like in that way a bit of a microcosm of how all of this shit works. Like once we eventually stop doing like Middle Eastern terrorism or whatever, you're gonna get some line in some big movie that's like, you just do terrorism, huh? Gets the same reaction, and then we just move past it to whatever next.
Yeah, there'll be some in like 10, 15 years time. There'll be something about, we didn't manage to trans all the kids, but we got most of them, like something like that, you know. But Holly comes in and she's wearing a Rolex that Ellis gave her, and Ellis kind of makes a big deal out of it.
Ellis like flags this up ahead of time because Takagi says about her, she was made for this business, tough as nails. And Ellis sort of taunts John by saying, for her, distinguished service, but we got her a watch.
It's a Rolex.
Because he's the kind of person who says,
it's a Rolex.
Omega.
That's a Rolex.
Lol, poor.
Like, the thing is, just by the second time you see Ellis on screen, you go, this guy's going to die at some point. And like, you know this for a fact. Oh God, you're like, fucking Christ! I hope
someone does kill him.
I wish I had that as well, but I recorded over it with a drop
I'm
from
doing
Uncle.
all the drops on this.
I know, I recorded over it with like Uncle
right.
drops that I can't use yet, even. So. Just fucking radio silence. All I've got is, I think I've got.
Let me bust.
There you go.
so
yeah, that's Ellis all the time.
John and Holly have this like spark of reconciliation. Maybe the Holly's like, do you want to come and stay with me in the spare room? She says, I missed you. And it's this moment of like, oh, okay, maybe it's gonna be,
yeah, maybe it's gonna work out.
It's like
Bruce.
It's a decent.
Fuck it. Willis is the one that fucks it up, and he like flags it to himself
because he's a dick. Yes. They have this like sort of decently acted. They're separated, but they kind of still want to make it work. It's Bruce Willis isn't as good an actor as Bonnie Bedelia, so she's doing most of the like heavy lifting there. But the bit that like really does make it work and really does make you like and sympathize with John McClane is after they argue and she leaves, he like sort of like lightly bangs his head on the door frame and like he talks to himself. He talks to himself in the mirror. He's like, "Oh, great job, fantastic, you fucking idiot."
Yeah,
and it's like, who hasn't done this? It's very relatable.
It's quite clever too that they establish his habit of talking to himself, given that he's going to spend much of the film on his own later on. It's quite clever. But anyway, then the boys arrive.
You fucking fellows roll on up.
Ultimate level guy you love to see, Alan Rickman. I am, I'm wearing my number one Alan Rickman fan t-shirt. I've got my number one Alan Rickman fan mug. I've got the little Homer Simpson Alan Rickman pennant, and I'm sitting down to watch this movie.
He made the great career
Alan
decision
Rickman.
to die before anyone asked him what he thought of J.K. Rowling.
Very smart.
Well, someone did, and then he just died. Which is the correct
I'm sure he would have been.
response.
I'm sure he would have been lovely about it.
I've got all the same.
Interview terminated.
Yeah, I've got all the same stuff, but it says number 2 Alan Rickman fan because I'm aware of the presence I'm in.
It's not often that I say this about any man, listeners, but that is a sick ass goatee.
Right?
That's true.
It's fucked
It's
up.
I almost never say that, but it is good.
Yeah, and so he enters the movie goatee first, leading his boys in. You know what else I love? Another one of my favorite genders. A precisely like Swiss watch timed heist entrance.
Always
Love
good.
that.
It's a Rolex.
It's so good because like he's not even the first guy to like walk out of the back of the van. Like a couple of people come out before him, but then they just part enough, and the camera like catches up with him and walks with him as he comes out, and it's just
nice.
It's
a lovely bit
shot.
of direction. Also, one of the goons for the eagle-eyed viewers is Vigo, the bad guy from Ghostbusters 2.
That
Famously,
is right.
one of the most difficult actors in the world to work with. There you go.
And we get this,
this
really fun infiltration scene where they kill the security guards downstairs. They send a guy like in a perfect security guard disguise to sit at the desk and imitate one of them. We see them like wiring up explosives. My favorite little detail in this is the guy who like is following directions in his head to get to where to plant the explosives. And because these are Eurotrash, he like is giving the directions to himself in German. So he's like walking out of the door like links and rechts, and it's really fucking good.
It's really solid. This fella who's playing Theo, Clarence Gilliard Jr., having the most fun of anyone in this entire movie. Just absolutely loves to be here, loves to be doing things.
He's the hacker, and he like disables all of the lifts, so everyone at the party is stuck at the party. They don't know anything's gone wrong yet, and in fact, John and Holly get like briefly walked in on earlier by like a couple who are looking for an office to have sex in.
The 1980s,
and exactly, and as the terrorists storm the party and like fire shots in the air and take hostages, John McClane is doing the self-help tip. He is busy sort of like making fists with his toes in the carpet.
Yeah. And again, talking out loud to himself, he's just like, son of a bitch.
Yeah.
Fist with the toes.
It's cool.
Yeah, because it works.
And there's this line from Alan Rickman, which it goes sort of under discussed, but when they're all in the elevator, they've all got the guns, they're going up. It's hard to pick up, but he goes,
remember, no Russian.
Which is...
Well done.
It's very good.
The duck AI.
So they like seize control of the party, including like dragging the topless woman who was busy having sex on a desk out, just so you get a little bit of like tits.
Yeah,
the 80s.
Again, also wrote the 80s.
I didn't even notice that.
And sort of shoeless in just his undershirt, his vest, and his trousers, John McClane sees that he is outnumbered. He sees that there are like 7 of them. They all have submachine guns, and he legs it.
Yeah, he goes to like hide in upstairs, like a section of the building which is still under construction, I think.
It's fucking great. It's not very action hero because Schwarzenegger at this point he exits the office. he kills 7 guys.
Yeah,
handily. Whereas
exactly.
Whereas McClane, he leaves, and then we get like one brief shot of him going up the staircase, just like checking on what's in each room, and he's saying it out loud to himself. It's like, all right, 32 computers, 33 under construction. They're trying to build like a mental map of the area.
And then Hans exits the elevator with his gay little Filofax. He's got a little like 1980s day planner in a little like leatherette cover, which I really like. That's where he keeps his master plan, like Kim Kitsuragi. That's where he does his thinking. And he exits, and Alan Rickman is having the time of his life doing this. He like any role, but especially this, he talks like the words taste bad. Like
that's true,
like
but also
that
like one thing I really like about the way Alan Rickman delivers his lines in everything actually is that he really takes his time to say it. Like
due to the Nakatomi Corporation's legacy of greed around the globe, they are about to be taught a lesson in the real use of power. You will be witnesses. And the way he delivers this is much more effete than that as well. He's got his little planner. He's like sort of like standing quite nerdily. And he's of course delivering this to like a room full of terrified hostages. And it's an interesting idea of like of masculinity is going on with Hans Gruber, which I will get to.
And he continues in this same vein because he asks to see Mr. Takagi. He knows Mr. Takagi's whole bio and like menaces the people in the crowd who might be him until the real Mr. Takagi comes forward.
It's interesting. Mr. Takagi's bio includes him being interned by the US government as a child. This is, again, a little bit of like, oh, we feel a little bit bad about the Rising Sun stuff. Maybe.
And he takes Mr.
Also, the Mr. Takagi's first name is Joseph. Like, he's an American citizen. So it's like, oh, maybe we fucked up with Rising Sun. Maybe. No apologies, but we are going to make a little joke about it. And we're going to include this.
He takes Mr. Takagi upstairs into kind of a private room to talk to him. And we see that he kind of, he says, he makes a reference to Alexander the Great and then says, benefits of classical education.
In fact,
go ahead.
When Alexander saw the breadth of his domain, he wept, for there were no more worlds to conquer.
Actually, he's misquoting Petrarch there. It's the right. Alexander is like taught the existence of infinite worlds, and he weeps because he's like, well, why haven't I been able to conquer one of them? But he also he does a very sort of a me move, right? Which is he takes them upstairs. They have a bunch of scale models of like the Nakatomi Corporation's
also wrote down
various
me.
projects.
Yeah.
and
He's got some
and,
Gundams.
he's got like some
Just likes them.
Gundams.
He
He's
likes
got
them.
some like plane models, and he like is magnetically attracted to one of them. And he looks over at this bridge model, and he goes,
I always enjoyed to make models when I was a boy. The exactness, the attention to every conceivable detail.
and as someone who also loved to make models when I was a boy, because of the exactness and the precision, yeah, no, I get you, Hans.
No
This will lead me.
You
to
hate Hans
another
Gruber because he's autism coded.
That's right.
theory. Yes.
Yeah.
He's autism coded, and he's something else coded as well. We'll get to that.
And also, this
Um,
will tie in later to my theory about this film's relationship between masculinity and time. But anyway, at this point,
also in the lift on the way up to this floor, in order to prove that he is like cultured, he notices who made Takagi's suit, and he says, "You know, I have two of those myself." And he transitions from this. Interesting choice of word. He transitions from this to sort of like back to crime by saying, "I could talk about men's fashions and like an international politics all day, but duty calls. Please give me your computer password." And Takagi is like he's resolute. He's like, "No, I don't want to do that." John, meanwhile, sort of infiltrates this floor. He's like hiding under the model.
and then Alan Rickman has my favorite line in the whole film where he's like, "Mr. Takagi, I'm going to count to 3. There will not be a 4.
Yes.
Good.
I,
So cold.
you
So
hear him
cold,
sort of-
baby.
while John is like hiding, you hear Hans make his sort of like his sales pitch to Takagi. And one of the things I like is that he knows how little in Takagi's terms he's robbing him of. He says, I want the $400 billion or whatever.
600 million, I
bearer
believe.
bonds.
$640
In
million,
your-
yeah.
Oh, okay.
In that's not a lot of money in corporate terms.
Not a ton.
In your vault. And Takaki's like scandalized. He's like, "You want money? What kind of terrorist are you?" And he gives him this big smile and says, "Who said we were terrorists?" And you have to know that at this time, right, Euro terrorism was sort of like, we're not quite at the 90s thing of like True Lies, where we're like, all terrorists must be in Hollywood's vision Arabs, right? And so as we're sort of scousing the globe for acceptable terrorisms, it was now distant enough that we could use Euro terrorism, right? And so that like this is the same sort of like sort of mental framework in which some of the Jack Ryan movies take place, or the Harrison Ford
Patriot
ones,
games, yeah.
where it's like, yeah, like terrorism is like a European phenomenon, it's like a left-wing phenomenon, right? It's like a Baader-Meinhof phenomenon. It's like a sort of a Northern Ireland phenomenon, and therefore, that's what a terrorist looks like. And so the movie kind of like happily tricks you into doing that, and it's like, no, they're just thieves.
Mhm.
They're trying to rob the place.
Just want some fucking money.
Yeah.
Exactly.
He's on his grind.
And what could be more relatable than
And
that?
Mr. Takagi says, I'm not going to help you. I can't do it. I don't know the password. You're just going to have to kill me. And Alan Rickman just goes, okay, kills him.
All right.
Yeah.
There you
Also,
go.
another detail I like: Theo and Carl, one of his henchmen with long blonde hair, are like in the room, and they like they're taking bets on whether Takagi gives him the password.
Yeah.
And after Rickman kills him, you just see Theo just get handed like a $20 bill.
It's really good. Like the background, the stuff the guys are doing in the background of this is fantastic.
Yes. There's a lot of like, I think a lot of that is just improv, and I think a lot of this is John McTiernan giving the actors scope to do shit, which I really like. Because actors sometimes have good ideas, it turns out. You don't have to subscribe to this view that like actors aren't real and the director makes the movie happen by using them as puppets. John knocks over something on the table and like gets hunted upstairs, but they've heard something, but they don't know he's there
What
yet.
was
They're
that?
in their caution alert
It's just
phase.
the wind.
Yeah. Exactly. He runs upstairs into a floor that's under construction, and he sees the fire alarm, and he pulls that.
And he goes, pulls it.
Yes.
Like we see how completely ineffective this is, because it just like the dude at the front desk just like, there's been a fire alarm pulled, and they're like, all right, phone the police station, give them the guard's name, the building code, and tell them to turn it off. It's been a false alarm. Also, what floor was that set off on? It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah, and he
you
takes
fucked
a
yourself.
second before he like
He does, yeah,
beautiful. It's a beautiful piece of acting by Rickman because he says, yeah, call him, tell him to like cancel the alarm, takes another step down the staircase, and then goes, oh shit, and then gets back on the radio. It's like, what floor was that on? Which is really good. And so John is at the window watching the fire engines like drive towards Nakatomi Plaza, and he sees them turn their lights off and turn around. And at this point, Hans has sent his sexiest Eurotrash
Yeah,
to kill
R.I.P. to
John
this
McClane.
They
perfect
have
dude.
deployed
Yeah.
Jeffrey Dahmer. Absolute Dahmer lookalike, I'm afraid. Sorry, fellows.
Yeah.
Deploy him.
He has like sort of like not quite shoulder length, very blonde hair, incredible fit. You might say to yourself, "Oh, this is just like a grey sweatshirt and grey jogging bottoms." Meanwhile, me and Riley, host of Trash Future, are watching this going, fuck, is that Rick Owens? Shit, dude.
Super tight trousers, an insanely long sweater.
Fuck.
Just, and then like a shoulder mounted fucking like
Gun.
machine
like,
gun of some description.
It's like a first generation
Mac 5,
HK
whatever.
MP5.
That's the one.
And he's like walking around going, where are you? And then as
It's a
he's
promise
like
I will
trying
not
to
hurt
like,
you.
yeah, I promise I will not hurt
I
you. And this
thought
is
you
followed
joined Arthurs.
immediately by the
And it was Bruno
meatiest,
Hartenfast.
the meatiest HK slap I've ever heard. Where he like, you're supposed to do is he takes the charging handle of the HK and he just like slaps it down so the bolt locks open so it's ready to
You're
fire.
supposed to spank
And-
the gun. It's the please more mommy gun.
Slap the fruit.
Slap the
yes. Well,
fruit.
so the operator's manual says to operate this in, and I quote, a soldierly fashion, which means it wants you
I think
to hit
I think
it.
my manual also says that.
Yeah, does anyone want to operate either of us in a soldierly fashion?
Yes.
But so he moves around the thing where he thinks John is hiding and just sprays the whole fucking area with 9mm. It's great. It's like, no, you're not giving yourself up to these people.
John gets
and
him
John,
at
who has already
gunpoint,
moved,
and he says, "You are just a stupid policeman." And they have a fight.
What he says specifically is,
There are rules for policemen.
and we get our first hint that John McClane is like a rogue cop because he goes, "That's what my captain keeps telling
Another
me."
one of those. Just are there any cops that do play by the book that are just kind of very
Yeah, me.
secured cannons?
Very secure
We
attachment.
need at
style
least one
cop.
secure cannon, man. We
Yeah.
gotta have one on the force.
I would love to see a series about a cop who just very strictly plays by the rules. Doesn't have any personal problems, doesn't drink, just normal cop.
Yeah,
So-
just a standard guy.
Yeah.
Cool.
Mhm.
Yeah, let's go for it.
So he has this fight with not Uli. Forget what this dude's name is.
Doesn't matter.
clearly.
Jeffrey
Some
Dahmer.
shit. Yeah, Dahmer.
Tony.
Tony.
Oh!
And he kills him. But there's two things I want to draw out here. First of all, every time he's in a fight scene, McClane sort of like is screaming incomprehensible threats at the guy.
Yes.
He's like, "I'm gonna kill you. I'm gonna eat you." It's perfect. I really like it because it makes sense for a guy who like runs his mouth and is scared and
Yeah.
like talks before he thinks.
It's a nice
And the other
performance.
thing- Is this kill is accidental? They fall down the
Yes.
fucking stairs, and he just happens to break his neck.
And he like looks at like his dead body and like briefly is like, "Oh fuck." He doesn't feel bad about it. It's not a remorse thing. It's just shock.
Mhm.
But it's well done. It's like, this is not a guy who is ready to kill at all times. This is someone who has been sort of like forced into it by circumstance.
Mhm.
Yes.
But he takes his walkie-talkie, his cigarette lighter, his machine gun, and not his shoes because the shoes are too small.
Yes.
really good.
And he sets him up on a chair and he sees some Christmas stuff because it's a Christmas movie, and he puts him in the elevator and he sends him down to the floor that he knows Hans is on while he is riding on the top of the elevator, which fuck that, absolutely never doing
Every
that. No,
single
thank you.
thing that takes place in the elevator shaft, which is an immense amount of this movie, fills me with so much dread and fear. I cannot fucking cope with it.
Surely it's not any more dangerous than being in the lift.
No, I think it's much more dangerous than being in a lift because I can fall off the edge.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll get crushed, which nearly happens to him. But so he sees them come into the lift and like see Tony's dead body, And he's writing down on his arm in Sharpie like their names and how many of them there are,
Mhm.
which is smart. And that's when Gruber sees that he has written on Tony's sweater in, I think it's meant to be blood, "Now I have a machine gun. Ho, ho, ho."
Mm.
Which I really... It's the
Perfect
most
delivery,
line read.
actually.
Mhm.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
phenomenal.
Holly sees the corpse in the lift as well, and she's like, John's alive. Oh, and also this guy who's been killed is the brother of one of our other henchmen, Carl.
Carl, the big long-haired dude.
Fuck yeah.
He's very upset that his brother's been killed. And John uses the walkie-talkie that he got from the guy he killed to go to the roof and broadcast on the police emergency frequency and be like, Mayday, Mayday, they've taken over Nakatomi Tower. And the lady, they are both ladies,
Yes.
on the other
Two
end,
women.
don't listen to him.
Women
Because
Like,
we're too
fucking-
busy doing our nails.
Uh-huh.
That's true.
The woke police refuse to listen to him because...
It's just like when they made Robocop gay.
Yeah, very much. He's like trying to tell them what's happening, and they're like, "This is an emergency frequency." And his response to that is, "Fine, fuck it, come down here and arrest me." But which I like, but they don't listen to him. They just cut him off.
There's also one of my favorite lines in the film where they say, "So this is the emergency frequency? It's for emergencies only." And he says, "Yeah, no shit. Do I sound like I'm ordering a pizza?"
Just really soft. He just like screams that shit down the phone. And they're like, all right,
this is
check if there's a fucking dude in the zone, send him along.
Send a guy. Send our most bored guy.
And we get...
Meanwhile,
Sorry, go on. Yeah,
we'll
talk about it in a minute.
The second this radio call goes out, Hans and all the others hear it on their radios. And so Hans grabs he rustles up some guys, including Carl. There's a fantastic Steyr AUG. Might be Orc, whatever. And it's like, go up to the roof and kill him. But like, do it quietly. Like, just like lock him up there if you have to. Just so long as when the police get here, they see that nothing's wrong and they leave again. And Carl is, of course, out for blood. He wants to kill John at this point.
So they get into a little bit of a firefight. John escapes into the lift shaft. Hans is like, just lock him in.
Again.
Hans is like, just lock him in there. Lock it, like, just leave it. And Carl turns off the radio. Carl wants fucking blood. And John manages to lower himself down the lift shaft by the sling of the machine gun and get into the air conditioning ducts.
Yeah, and this is where we get the other line. Now I know what a TV dinner feels like, which is like, this is the like perfect kind of like diehard masculinity, right? Is he's trapped, he is scared, and he's wisecracking in order to cope. That like this is his coping skill.
Yeah.
Is he talks to himself and he says things that are kind of funny.
It's nice that he's doing that, and the movie tells us he's doing this because he's scared, not because he's like, I'm so cool, I'm making quips under fire. Like, they fly now. Like, they're doing it because he's like scared. I think a lot of films like quip, but we kind of forget that the quips are meant to be there to like diffuse the tension and not work. But this film does remember that.
Yeah, this is one of the things I think like the They Fly Now stuff. That's a copy of a copy of a copy of this, and it's sort of like now become so attenuated that it's just this sort of like Marvel smugness. And no, it was here originally for this. But so.
We get the introduction of our fellow, our boy, the real man, the best man, the fucking guy.
Yes, except this movie doesn't think that he's not a man. He's conditionally a man until the end of the movie. This is Sergeant
we'll fucking talk about that.
You're not a man until you shoot bullets out of your dick.
That's right.
And Sergeant Powell is busy picking up Twinkies. He's also black, which is like important because we're going to talk about how many different characters in this movie are black, and this is like progressive in a sense. He's overweight, and he's also very balding. And he's kind of a joke. Like as he has the guy like ring up these Twinkies, he's like kind of defensively like, she's for my they're for my wife who's pregnant, by the way. So lower sunglasses.
Yeah, and this other guy who is,
by the way,
also just like a perfect American-looking fellow. He's just like, yeah, sure, man.
Whatever, fine.
He gets the call to go and swing by Nakatomi Plaza and check it out. He goes inside, and the fake security guard's like, "Everything's fine here, dude." Like,
yeah, they're
no
fucking just like,
worries.
all right, who's our most Americanish guy possible? Security guard, we need you.
Yeah, I love the Dallas Cowboys.
He's probably just like, good
I'm
afternoon,
watching
officer.
the UT game. Go Falls.
The vibes is uber fucked.
and we see that like Powell is a little bit suspicious, and he pokes around a little bit further because he's smart, right?
This man of
and,
vibe
like,
killing.
around the next corner is the guy with another MP5 who's ready to kill him should it come to that. But he stops just short and he's like, "Nah, fuck this.
Ich bin ein
This is fine."
redneck dude.
It's clearly fine. They hired one German man. That's not a crime. I don't know why he's pretending to be an American, but it's fine. I'm just gonna leave. And meanwhile, upstairs, John is getting into a gunfight that Powell cannot hear. He's under a table. A guy he kills one guy in self-defense, and then another guy is standing on top of the table, and he goes, "Next time, when you have a chance to kill someone, don't hesitate." And John shoots him through the table, fully breaking with the rules and the cop and all of this. And it's just like, okay, thanks, I won't. Goes to the window, sees Powell about to leave, and has he has a
Smart
brain
choice.
thought.
Brain fucking wave hits him here. And it's like the entire time through this scene, like Powell is being watched by like 10 guys in the next floor up, all of whom have guns trained on him. And he's just like, "It's calm, this is normal as hell." And then as he goes to drive away, a body lands on the trunk of his car.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And all hell
it
fucking breaks loose immediately.
Immediately, everyone in the building starts shooting at his car. He, just like floors it in reverse, drives off an embankment, is calling for like all the backup in the world at this point. And at this point, we have to introduce a third kind of dipshit. Right?
Yeah.
Which is the media guy who is introduced making a Wolfgang Puck joke. He's like, "Yeah, I know Wolfgang. I can get you a reservation at his restaurant," on the phone. Who like has the police scanner on and has to like sort of berate his way into getting a remote video truck to go out there to this shooting at Nakatomi Plaza.
This is Walter Peck from Ghostbusters 1.
Very good at this exact kind of vibe of guy.
So John, again, like the Borg, like an early player in Fallout, just harvests everything from the corpses of the people he kills. And he steals detonators and C4. As we later discover, this is all the detonators the bad guys have. And they're like, fuck, he's got all the detonators, we need those. But he calls Hans on the radio and is like, "Hey, what's up, motherfucker?" Hans says he's seen too many movies. You're from a bankrupt culture.
This is a really important scene, right? First of all, he calls him, and he is so annoying, and I say that as a compliment, right? In some ways, it kind of predicts trolling, right? The way Hans he like looks at the radio in his hand once he realizes he is dealing with the sort of the American everyman and how annoying this is. And we have this great conversation, which sets up my main point about this movie, right? Which is that this movie is the blueprint for a heavily contingent, white, cishet, but sort of culturally default due to those hegemonies. This is 90s masculinity, right? And so what it's being confronted with is some smug Eurotrash going,
Just another American who saw too many movies as a child. Another orphan of a bankrupt culture who thinks he's John Wayne.
and in order to like incorporate and respond to those anxieties that American culture might be bankrupt and might only have movies and John Wayne, who is ridiculous, and Schwarzenegger and Stallone, right? The response is irony. He says, "I always preferred Roy Rogers." And if you don't know who Roy Rogers is, he's the singing cowboy. It's sort of like sequin-shirted, white-suited, troubadourish joke. Like he's sort of like very PG. Roy Rogers got in like gunfights, but like barely. And it's very interesting, right? Because I think you can draw a, and I use this word very precisely, straight line from guy who is surprised when a guy kisses him, but is willing to sort of like bait someone else by talking about wearing sequin shirts, to the kind of sort of homophobic but ironic defensive posture of like the 2000s and Abercrombie and Fitch and all of that shit. And I think part of the reason why there is so much irony around is because this recast the whole of what American masculinity was supposed to be in the 90s to be ironic and sarcastic and referential to different movies.
Interesting. Huh.
I honestly think this is like the sort of like prehistoric creature that predicts the evolution of Marvel.
God, you might be right.
Alice analysis.
That's my theory. That's my Alice analysis.
We do get the famous line where Bruce Willis says "Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker."
Yes, and that's a fucking synthesis, is what that is, right? Because Yippee-ki-yay, folks, is Roy Rogers playing a banjo, riding off into the sunset. Whereas if you like, and then you add motherfucker to it, which is like the one heavy swear you are allowed in like an 80s action movie, like Schwarzenegger might get to say that to a guy who is also as big as him and shirtless before he impaled him with a pipe. Be like, motherfucker. Like, once you weld those two together, that's a fucking dialectical synthesis, is what that is. And that's like, the new thing is like it contains the seeds of both of these, but is like in opposition to both of them internally. That's what that is.
The LAPD arrive.
Yeah.
The LAPD arrive and they're dipshits is the other thing about them.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, true.
Throughout this movie, Powell stays on the radio to John, and Powell is like sensible and reasonable, and he and John understand each other. Everyone else in the LAPD is a fucking moron.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, true, correct.
So
I refer to this scene generally as like dickheads arrive at the scene. Because like two guys in rapid succession roll up and are like, I am a cunt, hello. And I'm like, all right, welcome.
The deputy chief of the LAPD, Dwayne T. Robinson, who is, I think, consciously designed like the sort of more tyrannical American football or basketball like coach. He's wearing kind of same kind of suit, a little bit kind of Bobby Knight vibes. You're in big trouble, mister, sort of thing, though, too. High school principal as well. We get sort of like immaculate 90s SWAT vibes where they're all wearing the like one-piece vests and the like baseball caps. There's an interesting little scene where they run through some rose bushes and one of the like SWAT cops gets his hand pricked by a thorn and he stops and goes, Jesus.
Yeah.
And it's like,
and that's
these
also...
guys... These guys are soy and gay, but they're also stupid, right? Because they ran through like a bunch of rose bushes instead of an open lawn.
And John even calls them macho assholes as they try and breach the building.
Yes,
despite his warnings, and they just get absolutely fucking owned by the bad guys.
Here come the first of a couple of things I'd like to note, and these generally go under the heading that I'm calling "You are talking on an open line, cunt. Shut up." Which is where Bruce Willis sees that they're about to try to enter the building and says on the line that he knows Hans Gruber has access to, "No, you're going to try to come in." And I'm like, don't do that.
Precipitates this.
They try to defuse it by immediately thereafter having Theo on the TV monitors be like, "Look, they're going to come in," but like the intel came from
it's his fault.
Came from him first.
And they bring in an armored vehicle, which the guys destroy with a like
bazooka.
Huge.
Okay. Let's take a second here, because the line is just like, send in the car, and then we get the car intro cutscene.
It's like a mini boss.
Yeah, it's fucking. It just like comes out of nowhere, and like Theo's just like, they got an RV, and then immediately it gets shot with a missile and destroyed.
Yeah, Vigo blows the shit out of it.
Hell yeah,
yeah,
just rock.
And then Hans on the radio is like, hit it again, and this is John's like radicalizing like hero moment. Is he yells at him, let them pull back, you asshole. And he doesn't. He hits him again, like destroys the thing, kills a bunch of cops. We also, I'm gonna bring this up every time this happens in Equilibrium or RoboCop. We see wounded cops like writhing in pain.
We do,
because you're like, these guys are dipshits. It's their own fault, but you're still meant to sympathize with them.
And John drops a bunch of C4 down the lift shaft.
He does.
Yeah, what does he say when he drops the C4 down the lift shaft?
Take this under advisement, a-hole, I believe. Something like that.
Yeah, but when he drops it down the thing, he says, "Geronimo, motherfucker." And that is part of, like, it's not at the beginning, and it's certainly not at the end, of a long, long history of invoking the name of Geronimo when you're about to do some, like, action movie shit. Like, it was a thing in World War II as well. And it's like,
A lot of people yelling as they jumped out of planes.
yeah, it was the code word when they killed Osama bin Laden. There is a long, long history
Well,
of,
I would
like,
hope for a much better code word when they killed me.
it's like, it's racially insulting too, because this was an enemy of the United States. It was a Native American leader who was killed ultimately by the United States. It's like, it's interesting because this is the other lens, right? And it's telling you this all the time, but you never really see this written about because it's so obvious. Die Hard isn't a fucking Christmas movie. Die Hard is a Western. Die Hard is a Western about the only lawman who goes into a strange and unfamiliar territory.
Full of gay
And is
European
then
men.
and is forced to duel a gay European man who in a different time would have been played by Lee Van Cleef. It's a Western.
At this point, Ellis decides he's the main character of the film.
He does,
So,
yeah.
Yes.
By doing cocaine,
Ellis
which
does
is the
some
effect cocaine has, I'm told.
So Ellis does some coke and he goes, fuck, I'm going to go sort this all out. Give me a minute.
Yeah. I'm going to fix wolves.
Cool, man. Great fucking idea. This is a perfect scene. This is a spot-on scene. Ellis is a perfect character. I
love
hate him
it.
with all my heart. I love him to bits.
Yeah, he says a bunch
Like-
of racial slurs.
Yeah.
He does. Because, again, the 90s man, he's ironic, he's sarcastic. One thing he isn't is racist. And so racism is for assholes like Ellis.
Yeah.
Ellis, who, like, deploys a bunch of racial slurs into this room, which also disgusts Gruber.
Yeah, that is
Who is
interesting.
like, he's like insulted by Ellis's stupidity and his racism, and he lets him sort of like negotiate because Ellis's thing is, I can bring you John McClane. His name is John
This
McClane.
scene
First
is
of
so
all,
good.
Ellis is like,
Ellis,
on deals,
Ellis
baby.
clearly thinks like he's fucking smashing this, but you can tell just
yes.
by Alan Rickman's face that he hates this guy and is humoring him. It's so good. Ellis, like,
It's really good.
Hans is just like, wow, you're really clever. You really figured all that out. Well done.
wow.
Yeah, what's it's fantastic because like Hans gets on the fucking radio to John and is like, John, I've got someone here, a very special friend I'd like you to hear from. And like you can see on John's face that he's clearly prepared for it to be Holly. And he's like, oh God. And then he hears,
Hey, John boy.
and he just goes, Ellis, what did you tell them?
Because Ellis says, hey, I'm John's like oldest friend. We've known each other for years, despite the fact they've just met that night. Like,
Yeah,
he'll
he's
listen
here
to
because
me.
of me.
Yeah.
Like, he's like, he was
and
my
then
plus
John's
one.
like, you idiot, you've put yourself in danger. Like, what have you done? And then Ellis has this moment where he's bluffing or thinks he's bluffing. He's like, John, you got to come down. You got to stop interfering. They're going to kill me, John. Like, you got to turn yourself in. And then Hans is like actually loading his gun as this is happening.
Yeah, and Ellis
Yeah,
still on the line is just like, Hans, hey, what are you doing? I'm not a method actor. This is radio, not television.
Yeah.
And it's just
Yeah,
like,
and
put it together, man. Put it together.
And John even
Yeah,
tries
and
to
Ellis-
warn him. He's like, Ellis, you don't. These guys are fucking for real. They will not fuck around. And then like John doesn't come down, and Hans just fucking shoots Ellis and kills him.
Yeah, he talks himself into an early grave.
Yeah.
And because the LAPD are listening this whole time, Dwayne, the chief, takes this as like evidence that John is like, first of all, he doesn't believe he's really a cop, but second of all, he's like, he's responsible for Ellis's death rather than Ellis.
Mhm.
Also, I should talk about this. The whole time, like, that John is sort of running around, Powell is on the radio with him in a profoundly homosocial way.
That was the
right?
word that I wrote down for the ending of the film.
He tells him he loves him at one point. At another point, when he says that he's going to get out of that and they're like their kids are going to play together, he says, "Well, that's a date." And it's interesting. So at this point, Gruber now calls the police and he's like, I have a list of demands,
Mhm.
right? And he starts demanding the release of the bad guys from every 80s action movie.
Yeah.
You got to release the United Provo Front, which Sean Bean was in
Mhm.
in Patriot Games.
Gotta-
You got to release Sean Bean from Patriot Games. You got to release. You got to release all the guys that Frank Drebin beats up at the beginning of
you
the
got to
Naked
release
Gun 2.
Skeletor. You got to release
Yep.
Mumra.
It's really
Krang.
good. It's really good because it's just like, you got to release these boys in Sri Lanka, and like one of his guys is like,
It's like, I want over-the-counter hormone replacement therapy.
He's just like, I read about him in Time magazine one time.
Yeah.
You got to release.
Yeah, you got to
It's like,
uncancel
Yeah.
Buck Angel. I want to pay Blair White's court fees. It's just making ridiculous demands.
Once you do all of that, all of us and the hostages will go up to the roof. You will put us on helicopters. We will go to the airport, and then we'll sort it from there. And at this point, the FBI show up.
I love
yeah,
this
the
guy.
fucking FBI, baby. First of all, A-star, love to see one character here in particular.
Robert Darby.
Love to see
We
him
love to
work.
see Robert Darby.
He's just so
We
good.
do. Not so much now because he's crazy, but like at the time, fantastic. And these are the two FBI agents, Johnson and Johnson.
They're credited
And
as Big
if you-
Johnson, Little Johnson, which is quite
That's right.
funny.
Agent Johnson is Special Agent Johnson, no relation.
If you think that the LAPD are macho assholes, the FBI's job in this movie is to be even bigger macho
I love
assholes.
it.
Fucking right.
They tell the chief, the LAPD chief, when we commandeer your men, we'll try to let you know. Like, fuck you, kind of thing. I really like it.
Yeah.
But for the next part of his plan, Carl needs the detonators. He's like bought some time with this, like, you got to release Skeletor shit.
Mhm.
But he needs Carl to go and
You gotta get those
the
fucking detonators.
Mm.
C4, it's useless with no detonators.
And Hans goes up because they've rigged the roof with explosives. Hans goes up to check it, and he puts his gun on one side and climbs up to the roof. And of course, he comes face to face with John, and he does this cool bit where he pretends to be a scared hostage by doing an accent.
He does a
American
voice.
accent.
I would say.
I got the drop for this.
You gotta be on fucking TV with that accent.
John has immediately seen through. Like,
yeah, John
moment
makes him
one.
like the second one.
I wonder if this is Alan Rickman trying to do an American accent and failing, or whether this is Alan Rickman trying to do a German doing a good American accent and failing, or whether this is
Yeah.
Alan Rickman trying and succeeding to play a German who is trying and failing to do an American accent.
I choose to believe that it's the latter, just to give Alan some credit, largely,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
I
yeah.
love the fucking guy.
Yeah.
It's
So
such a good fake accent. It's so funny.
We get this like very tense set of scenes, and then like McClane gives him a gun, which Gruber uses to like hold him up, only to find that it's empty.
I would have
because
shot him
obviously
first.
He didn't trust him.
Also, like,
Yeah.
the thing is, and I get mad about this in films and in real life whenever people are like, I didn't know the gun was loaded. When you hold a gun, you can tell whether or not it's loaded. Because if it's loaded, it's
Yeah.
fucking heavier. You can tell when a weapon is empty because it doesn't, it's like light. When a gun is loaded, you can tell. I saw this thing the other day. There was a real cop who was like shot his partner and was like, I didn't know the gun was loaded.
Yes.
It's like, then you're an idiot.
Cop being an idiot. Anyway,
Well, you're lying, more
we get
likely.
this. There's this running gunfight that ends up in a computer room, and having seen that McClane is like barefoot and also super fucked up, by the way, he's like covered in blood and dirt and stuff. Like Hans turns to Carl, and he looks and he sees that like McClane is hiding behind a big sort of glass partition. And he goes, "Schießt dem Fenster." And Carl forgets how to speak German for your benefit, so he can say, "Shoot the window, shoot the glass."
Because the one
And-
bit of intel that he has received over the course of his couple of seconds is, my boy Barefoot.
Yeah,
It's legal.
Barefoot is not legal. It's not legal because he like gets the floor covered in broken glass, and in order to escape, John has to run over broken glass.
Which they
barefoot.
very kindly don't show us.
No, but very unkindly, they do show us in the next scene him dragging himself into the bathroom.
They
And
show us
I
the
hate
aftermath.
glass stuff. I hate glass stuff. I hated it in Jack Ryan. I hated it in fucking The Other Thing.
I hated it when they did
Oh,
it for
really-
absolutely no conceivable reason in the second Man from U.N.C.L.E. movie. That was really bad.
Yeah, I really don't like it. But so he is like, he's pulling these shards of glass out of his feet, and he's like, to cope, he is talking to Powell on the radio, and we get Powell's backstory. And Powell's just like, yeah, I'm just a desk jockey. You don't think that's an honorable thing for a cop? And McClane says no, because 90s masculinity has its limits. And he says, how come you're just a desk jockey? And Powell's answer is, man, you remember fucking RoboCop 2? You remember where
I never got
in
to see it.
RoboCop 2 the guy goes,
Can't shoot a kid, can you, fucker?
well, Powell fucking disproved that because he shot a kid.
Mhm.
Yeah, he gets
shot
on the
a
radio and
kid.
is like, yeah, I killed a kid. And like, and then the movie's just like, This is sympathetic to me.
We also explicitly hear that this child had a toy gun when Powell killed a 13-year-old child.
Which I'm sure in the fucking 80s might have been something that's like, oh, that's an interesting, like, you know, abstract concept to give to a fucking cop. But like in this day and age, that's not a...
In present year?
What we see is this cop who has murdered a child and is walking around free.
Just hanging
Manslaughtered a child, I suppose. He's like,
True,
it was
true.
dark. He had a ray gun. And the way the movie presents this to you is...
You know, when you're a rookie, they can teach you everything about being a cop except how to live with a mistake.
Oh, boo-hoo. It must be
Swallow a bullet, cunt. That's how to fucking live with it.
difficult for you. I'm building all new levels of electron microscopes to find the tiniest violin possible to play for you.
My thing is, right, the way in which things have like insanely degenerated since the 80s is that now how many cops would admit to this being a mistake, right? Like, so much of the self-preservation discourse now when the cops shoot a child is, well, we had no way of knowing, therefore we shouldn't even feel bad. Like, Powell feeling bad is a moral standard to, like, beneath which things have now slipped. It's worse than that now.
Cool.
But so this has led Powell to have a life-changing disability. He has gunitis. He can't fucking shoot someone now.
Oh no!
Because he killed a kid.
He's been made unable to cum bullets out of his gun dick, which makes him a fucking loser.
Yes. Well, literally, his inability to do personal violence emasculates him. It's the same reason he's fat. Genuinely, it is. Like, he's not really a man anymore.
Yeah,
he's not really a cop
this
anymore.
Film does really lean hard on the idea that, like, men are the gender that hurts people, and if you can't hurt people, you're not a man.
So the FBI bully the So the FBI bully the city into cutting the power, which, as we see, is the last step of Hans's beautiful, brilliant plan. And so we get Ode to Joy playing, and you root for these guys. You root for Hans and the gang.
100%.
I love this scene. I wanted, because like the FBI cut the power to the building, and then it goes off. But then it cycles back on because the building's on its own circuit, and so the vault is still, because the vault, when the power goes off, the vault opens, the magnets are released, and so it looks like they fucked it up and they're not going to do it. And then Hans thinks for a moment, and then he goes, "Make them angry." And then the hacker guy turns the lights to the building back on, so that all the people outside can see them. And then the FBI like, right, fuck this guy, turn off the power to the whole block, and that's what does it, and that's what opens it. And I'm like, oh man, clever, so good.
It's so fucking good. And the best thing is, like, the vault opens, and we get like, obviously we get Ode to Joy, and everyone's just like, they're all in the vault looking at all the fucking millions of quid that's laid out in front of them. And then we cut to the FBI guys, and they're like, no, we're shitting our pants in there.
Yeah. Meanwhile, the hacker's like, Merry Christmas. It's so
macho assholes, because like your 90s man, like, he's not dumb, right? And these guys are like dumb and headstrong. And this gets to the kind of masculinity that Hans Gruber presents, which is, you know, interesting.
The gay kind. But then
the gay
then
kind.
we learn
Fuck it,
what
I'll
the
talk
rest
about that
of...
now. That's the point of fucking Hans Gruber, is like, American trad masculinity is threatened and humiliated by an effete, by an effeminate, by like a European kind of masculinity that is primarily intellectual, but that knows about like Time magazine and Forbes, and knows about menswear, and like has carefully groomed itself, has like sort of like the very neat goatee, and the only response imaginable to that is irony and sarcasm and being smarter, but in sort of a like more roll with the punches, Indiana Jones sort of way.
I'm reminded of a quote by Carl Jung, who was asked about this kind of like crisis of American masculinity, and he said something like, you ask yourselves why American women prefer European men. I say, after all, it is because American women are not that different from European women. They're like the way that European men make love. I.e. two other men.
That's right, baby. To be fair, the other thing is, right, they find it necessary to undercut Hans Gruber in this moment, because it like we're shown his team are just like, this is a work of singular genius, that he would know they would cut this off, and that would be like a step in his plan. And then we cut to Al Powell, who just goes, yeah, they cut the power to the entire block. They've got the terrorist playbook, and they're just going step by step.
Mm-hmm.
So it
Powell, they're sort of like every smart person who has ever been outranked in a dumb room.
that's right.
Um,
That's his like
and
entire role for the entire movie, is to just be there like,
yes, yeah,
you are making a mistake, and for the guy to be like, fuck off. No, I'm not. Moving on.
yeah. But like, you can only sort of like. What's interesting is this European masculinity is like effeminate, right? And therefore it's gay. Whereas the not gay, heterosexual American kind of masculinity is to hang out on the phone with your boy, talking about how much you love each other.
How sad it
That's
is that you
straight.
killed a child.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
At this point, we learn what the final step of Hans's plan is going to be, which is they're going to herd all the hostages up to the roof. They've requested helicopters, and when the helicopters come in, they're going to blow the C4 under the roof, blow it all up. It looks like all the hostages and hostage takers are dead, and Hans is just like, it'll take them a month to sift through the rubble. By the time they figure out what's happened, we'll all be on a beach drinking Mai Tais in fucking wherever, right?
Oh, one other subplot I want to draw out is at one point
I wanna talk about
McClane's
the-
identity gets leaked.
Yeah. Sorry.
And they like identify him, and piece of shit media guy goes to his house and bullies the Latina maid who speaks sort of broken English, is not a character, and the way in which he gets in the house to interview them, and this is how like McClane is identified by Gruber in the first instance, is he threatens her with the INS, the Immigration and Naturalization Service, what becomes ICE, right? And so, a few things going on here. First of all, media guy is a racist piece of shit, right? Which we don't like. The movie doesn't like. But Holly's employing a fucking undocumented migrant to just, nanny her kids, and she's not helping with any of that shit. And also, within the universe of this movie, not just, all migrants are undocumented, but all, like, unless you count Robert Davi, 100% of Hispanic people in this movie are undocumented migrants. Which don't love. I don't love that, to be honest.
On the flip side, though, like, this is never really presented as a bad thing. It's just a kind of fact.
No,
It's presented as a bad thing.
yeah.
to
She's nice,
use
in
that
fact.
information
Yeah.
to your own ends, actually, if anything.
Mhm.
yes.
Speaking of family, though,
so-
John calls Al, this police sergeant. It's like, please tell my wife that I'm really sorry, and I should have supported
he
her
grows
more.
as a person.
Yeah,
by,
yeah.
like, I should have supported her job, and she's never heard me say I'm sorry, so I'm sorry, which I like.
My notes say
good.
you have to support your high-power business girlfriend.
That's right.
That's
fucking right.
It's true.
They start herding all the hostages up to the roof. John disarms the explosives.
Mhm.
And this leads to him and Carl having a big fight in the blue barrel room.
That's right.
The big room that they keep by the roof full of blue barrels.
Yeah.
I love him yelling during the fight, which
Yeah,
he does.
yeah.
Some more. This is where he tells Carl he's going to kill him and eat him.
Mhm.
And he kills Carl by like hanging him from a chain.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's fucking brutal.
Which is
Brutal. That's what I wrote down.
Having
At this
seen the
point,
news, Hans figures out that Holly is John's wife and takes her hostage.
yeah.
That's right.
The FBI are riding in like helicopters with like
I love this.
with helicopter gunships.
This is really solid.
And Johnson says to Johnson, "It's just like fucking Saigon." To which Johnson says, "I was in junior high, dickhead." And thus we once again, right? Like collective traumas, anxieties. We ease them from the American psyche with jokes, right? So we've already done that for Rising Sun. Now we do that for Vietnam. This is the movie which really buries Vietnam again. Is I was in junior high, dickhead. Like it's not just like we felt bad about it and now we don't anymore.
No
or
one
whatever.
cares.
It's
Yeah, it's like, who gives
no
a
one
shit,
cares
man?
anymore, and it's funny.
Forgotten.
So yeah, the FBI sort of like see John on the roof, try to kill him.
John
'cause they're
herds the
macho
hostages
assholes.
off the roof as the roof blows up. He wraps a fire hose around his waist and jumps off.
Oh, fuck that.
Yeah, fuck
Yeah,
this.
yeah, it's
Fuck
cool.
that,
It's
no,
cool
thank
fucking
you.
sequence. The FBI chopper gets blown up too. And John manages to shoot his way back into the tower where Hans is making his escape with the bonds and with Holly. My notes
Yeah.
here say, release my
And-
wife.
he tapes a pistol with his last 2 bullets to his back with Christmas tape, and then sort of like surrenders himself. And we get our sort of a high noon duel here, and he tells Hans, "You've made a pretty good cowboy yourself." But we see that like masculinity and American sort of nationality are like wrapped up together, and they're referential because Gruber says, John Wayne and Grace Kelly, or Grace Kelly, whatever, aren't going to like ride off into the sunset together. He's referencing High Noon, I believe. And McClane says, "That's Gary Cooper, asshole," which is like that's fucking, it's pure Tarantino there, right? Like American sort of masculinity and violence and nationalism all tied in with knowing these movies, right? And because Gruber is an outsider, he doesn't fucking know High Noon. He doesn't even remember it was Gary Cooper. And he is punished for this with his boy getting shot and then getting shot. And at the last moment, he clings on to the Rolex that is fucking symbolizing Holly's like sort of like
independence from John.
Yes, and
ties
like
to Ellis,
corporate feminism and Ellis and Takagi.
Another thing that's worth noting is that Alan Rickman also delivers the line "Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker," but it's like intentionally ridiculous coming out of his mouth.
Yes.
Which all goes towards the same sort of like, "You're not masculine, you're European, you fool."
Mm-hmm. And he McClane like releases the watch trap, and the watch and Alan Rickman go into the sort of the wild blue yonder and drop off the tower.
And of course, very famously, Alan Rickman was told they would count to 3 before they released him, and they only counted to 2, and he was very upset.
This is one of my favorite things you can do to an actor.
I had to mention that on the do not do this to actors. I had to mention this on the podcast because if you do not do this, because if I hadn't mentioned it, then we would have got a million people telling us about it.
I'm sure we'll have a million people telling us about things we missed about Die Hard, and I'd just like to head that off by saying I don't care. Thanks.
In the TV show Treme, which is set in New Orleans, they have a scene where the food critic and piece of shit, I think Adam Richman, has like a Sazerac, a cocktail thrown in his face, and the way they got that take was to tell him, "Yeah, this take we're just like blocking out. No one's going to throw a drink at you for this one. We'll do it in the next one," and then they throw the drink at him. I love doing that to actors. I think it's funny.
It's
I think
funny.
Keep doing it.
Don't do that to actors. It's very irresponsible. You could hurt someone by doing this, and they'll be very upset.
But they're sort of puppets by the director anyway, so it doesn't really.
Yeah, exactly.
John and Holly kiss. John meets Al, and it's
they have a big hug.
Yeah, this is the moment where the music kind of climaxes. Like, this is the big emotional release moment.
Shit.
Yeah, fuck the wife shit. Like, fuck the wife.
Boys.
My notes here say homosociality.
This is where you meet like your long distance friend for the first time, and you're just like, "Yo, it's my homie."
God, it's that girl I've been chatting to on Discord.
This is the real romance in the movie.
It's my kitten.
Whereas sort of his marriage is more sort of like more possessive, and
the marriage is a trophy.
We see that she takes his name back, but. And this is the sole concession to progressivism, right? Is he admits that he should support her, and he introduces her by her maiden name. He says Holly Gennaro, and she corrects him and says Holly McClane. So the lesson here is, I guess, try to meet women halfway, but if you do, they will give you everything you wanted in the first place. If you just agree to compromise, you won't have to actually do it. And I think this sort of like sets the stage for a lot of the more toxic kinds of masculinity in the coming decade.
Cool.
Oh, yeah. But there's one thing to note here is that one character has not yet had their apotheosis. Someone is looking at the screen and they're yelling, "Let me bust!" And only one man can be allowed to finally bust bullets out of his gun penis and become a real man again. And that is Al.
Sergeant Al Powell.
Because Carl is alive. Carl emerges with a gun. Yep. He's going to shoot everyone. Yep. And Al reflexively draws his gun.
Immaculate stare, AJ.
Yeah. Al draws his gun and shoots him dead. And this is presented as heroic because he's learned from John that the real way you be a man is you kill someone on Christmas Eve.
If you kill a child you can actually redeem yourself by killing an adult afterwards. They don't tell you about this.
Yeah. You like, if you kill an Austrian man, it balances out. Also, how much did Stair kick in for this movie that you can drop one of their guns off a blown up building and it doesn't have a scratch on it? Argyle gets a heroic moment, which is worth noting. He like blocks off their escape route and punches out Theo.
Yeah, I did write stealth limo about that scene.
Holly punches the reporter.
That's right.
This is another thing I want to talk about.
Everyone just gets like punched, basically. Go on, sorry.
This is like the last. It's Punchmas Eve. The last sort of like shot, more or less, is the piece of shit reporter sticks a camera in their faces and is like, "How do you feel?" And Holly punches him. And this is interesting because after he gets punched, he gets laughed at, and then he goes, "Oh, did you get that?" And this is interesting. Women get the ability to do violence, but only the kind that humiliates and emasculates. Only the kind that shows you up to be a macho asshole.
Not the kind that actually hurts anyone.
Women committing violence is only ever a joke, whether that's Argyle being like, "Did your wife beat you up?" or whether that's her punching the media dipshit. Whereas male violence is like essential to your ability to like feel self-respect.
Which is why I'm very excited to announce the modern 2023 remake of Die Hard with me as Hans Gruber.
Yeah, Trans Gruber.
Yes, exactly. Thank you very much. We got there in the end.
Yeah, we did it, baby! Laugh track starts here. Let's put the music in.
Oh, happy holidays. From our podcast to yours.
From podcast to podcast. No, for real. I think this film has interesting things to say about masculinity and its relationship to time. Doing fucking temporal metaphysics here. We see throughout this that like planning, having a plan, figuring things out, knowing where you're going, that's gay shit. Don't do that. John McClane doesn't have a plan. Real men don't have plans. They just fucking react in the moment. Don't think about things. Just instinctively do shit. I thought that was interesting to note.
Mm-hmm. It's also spatially contained. Every shot that John's in until the end of the movie, it's like the last shot is him and Holly in like an open shot. He's constrained by some element of that framing. He's like in a door frame, or he's like shoved off to one side of the screen, or he's in a vent. It's constrained in that sense. It's wounded. You can get into some real bodies and spaces shit about like John McClane's body, and it's sort of like various like impositions and violations like and all of that. You can read a lot of essays about that if you wanted to. But most of all, we have a science-based system on this podcast. It's called the Scum System.
Sure.
And we're applying it to Die Hard because I guess this isn't technically a bonus episode. It's a Christmas episode.
Yeah,
like
and also
special.
I think this probably won't be the last time we visit the Die Hard franchise. So I think it will be useful to have a baseline.
We have at least 4 more Christmases to get through.
Yeah.
Die Hard movie.
I like Die Hard 4.0, and I think that also has interesting things to masculinity. What do we think about Smom for this film?
What do we think about Smom? I was always more partial to Roy Rogers with the sequined shirt. 7.
I don't think it's a 7, because remember when it comes to Smom, films get points taken off for sincerity, and I do think that some of the Smom in this is a way of showing us that John is afraid, which I like.
Yes. I gotta be honest, I wouldn't feel comfortable putting it above like a fucking 5, because like there is a great deal of this movie where, like, again, as you said, he's using this to sort of like ease himself more than anything else.
How about a
I do a 5.
4? Okay, 5.
Yeah, I'd do 5.
4.
Right, 5 it is.
4.
Cultural insensitivity.
Okay, so the ideal of manhood that this presents is not racist, but capital letters not racist only really applies to the relationship between black men and white men, right? It is like you, the viewer of this, are presumed to be a white man, and the lesson you must take from this is you should be nice and respectful to like the various different kinds of black men that exist in the world.
This is a lesson that Die Hard 3 will also repeat.
Yes. Latino people sort of like exist only as undocumented migrants.
Women of color, a myth, as far as I'm concerned. Don't exist.
Yeah, you shouldn't use racial slurs, but other than that,
you shouldn't. Again, yeah, I mean that's. I guess that's
it's sort
something
of like
of a fair lesson.
It is anti-racist in the sense that it tells you don't be racist.
This
is
in the who
shall
like
we say
most like people actually being racist are quite textually like cunts.
Mm-hmm.
yes,
Yeah, true.
It's
Also,
sort
in
of-
this film, as opposed to Rising Sun, Japanese people just kind of cool and normal.
Yeah, they're actually just people.
Yes.
It turns out we
Yeah.
hadn't figured that out until the late 80s, but you know,
Mhm.
I'm glad we got there.
yeah, we can make jokes about it. It's sort of like necessary but insufficient anti-racism. So I mean, honestly,
Better
I
than
would
we
give it like
usually
a
do on this podcast.
yes,
Yeah,
genuinely
fuck
yes.
it.
It's making an effort.
It's nice that it's trying,
God.
actually. Do we take points
Right,
off for that? Like, do you want to go 0?
Yeah,
Is
I
it the
think we
first time
do.
we've ever done that?
You don't want to
Sure.
give it as
Give it a 1.
I'll give it a 1. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Unprovoked violence.
Oh.
Well, okay.
Well-
First of all,
Unprovoked.
our first character, our primary character here is John McClane. His first kill is accidental. His second is in self-defense, and his third is where he starts to just like go ape shit. It's because
he has
that
to learn
character
to do it.
specifically tells him, "Hey man, you're gonna want to go ape shit in future."
Yeah. On the other hand, this is also a movie dedicated to rebussing the proposition.
There are rules for policemen.
Yes. And also
So-
the child.
Also, they do
And
kill a child,
also
and that's sort of
they- yeah.
shown to be like
Fine.
not fine, obviously, but not like something that someone should be punished for other than in their own
No, you
head.
shouldn't.
Mhm.
No, you shouldn't even be punished for it in your own head.
You can
should
just
get
keep
over
being a
it.
cop. You can
should,
still
like-
carry a gun.
Oh yeah, you're right. No, he's supposed to just get over it. All right, yeah, fuck this. Fuck this film, actually.
Yeah, remember when we did that Jack Ryan film where they killed a bunch of children?
I recall
yeah.
that, yes.
Yeah. How about a 3, 4?
I would say 4.
4? Okie dokie.
Misogyny. Now, this is interesting because, like I said earlier, I think the thesis of this is if you say that you are willing to compromise, you will never have to. Which is an interesting sort of defensive fallback line for men to go to, and one that proved very successful for them, still does to this day. It's like, I'm being reasonable. I'm giving you the appearance of everything you want. Why are you mad at me?
Call their bluff on that shit, girls. Just be like, yeah, okay, cool. I'll
Yes.
take what you said you do for me now. And they're like, what?
Yeah, do it.
It's it's a movie about like men responding to feminism by having to like sort of
By killing each other,
shrug
which
their
is great.
shoulders.
They're doing it for us.
Yeah, and by like shrugging their shoulders and being like, Jesus, this California shit crazy. Whatever, I guess.
Yeah.
Which is not the worst way you can respond to a world changing around you. It's not the best either.
I don't like that she's like, oh, actually, I'm Holly McClane at the end. I'm like, I believe it in the sense of romance, but it's interesting to make a film about masculinity and pretend you don't have anything to say about femininity.
And then it reasserts itself through violence very clearly at the end, perhaps the most clearly of any film we've done.
Oh, indeed.
So
And finally,
I would,
what does this movie say?
We haven't
about
given it a score.
Christmas.
yeah, I would say 4.
4?
I'd say 4.
That gives it a total score of 14, which is pretty darn good. Yeah, I mean, especially it's like kind of on a par with the later Daniel Craig's. So yeah, pretty decent, I'd say. A good start
For
for Die Hard.
1988,
Yeah, and like on a par with some of the Jack Ryans,
where James Bond was doing License to Kill, right?
Fuck
which
yeah,
had
God, he was.
21. Yeah. So yeah, pretty strong opening bid from Die
more
Hard.
progressive than Product X, more progressive than a comparable James Bond.
Mhm.
What does this movie say about Christmas?
Nothing, fuck
I don't
off.
care.
It doesn't
Fuck
say
you.
shit.
Have a wonderful holiday season.
Yeah, for real. Thank
and we
you.
will
Do we want to say
return.
anything? Do we want to have disincerity zone?
It's the last one of the year.
I would say,
we could
yeah,
do
I
some
would say the
sincere.
thing is, right, because we did the winter of content, which was Dev's idea and a brilliant
Oh
idea.
yeah.
The fact that we told hundreds of people you have no economic reason to give us money, and people still did, which I like because it means I can pay my rent.
Mhm.
That's genuinely touching. That's genuinely been like a huge sort of like emotional thing for me. It's like, wait a second, people fucking like me and my smarter friends talking about movies enough to like pay actual money when money is getting quite scarce. When we explicitly told them that they don't have to and they still do it, that's really meaningful. So thank you, truly.
I think for me, one of my favorite moments of the year came recently when Nate said that he went to Australia and he met a bunch of trans people who listened to Kill James Bond in New Zealand.
It was in New Zealand.
And I'm like, wow, that's so cool that like people all over the world listen to this like very silly podcast where we talk about cum. Like,
I literally text my like grandmother about that, right?
Yeah,
Honestly, it's just like, yo, people are listening to me in fucking New Zealand, and they're like,
so good.
oh, this guy knows what he's talking about.
Your
Not
like
his,
support
obviously, but,
really
you know.
does like mean the world to us.
Thank you.
So thank you. And I guess all we can say now is that Kill James Bond will return in 2023 with some more Man from U.N.C.L.E. shit.
Yeah,
so I hope
some
you're
more
ready for
silly
that.
bullshit. We're hoping to get my brother on at some point. My
Hell
real
yes.
actual like brother. So yeah.
Stay tuned for Abigail Thorne and the brother. And in the meantime, we will see you next year.
Thank you for listening to yet another episode of Kill James Bond. I don't know which one though, because we are banking these episodes as we're going away on holiday, variously, three of us throughout the month of December, which means that you will not get a fresh and new jazz outro every time. You will get this one for all 3 episodes that are yet to be released in December. So let's crack on so this isn't too annoying to listen to 3 times. Our £15 and above patrons are Christina Fox, Amanda Comet, Freya Aloysius, Gustavo Lira, Jack Holmes, Thomas Oberhart, Nick Boris, Kentucky Fried Commie, Yarek, Nata Mori, Harriet DeCock, Corios, Benno Rice, the Commissar formerly known as Jen, Beef Crime, Library Hitman, Callan Burney, Max Gamenhart, Jonathan Gerdes, Jack Drummond, Hell, Kit Devine, Lysamesh, Jay Martindale, Jonathan Siegel, Big Titty Goth Girl, Tarp O, George Rohack, Mothman, Harrison Fuller, Trip, Violet Cybra, Alex, L plus Liz Nash, doing well in Florida. Sorry you Brits are freezing your asses off. We don't have heating bills, so have some dosh. Paint McCalla, a trans robot, Ronan, Elizabeth Cox, Zoe Shepherd, Finn Ross, 2 Spy 3 Many, Turfs Eat Shit and Die Alone, Quinn Valeri, Alfredo, and Wolfie. Thank you. Kill James Bond is, of course, Alice, Abigail, and Devon. Our producer is the wonderful Nate Bethay. Our podcast art is by Matty Luchansky, and our website is by Tom Allen. See ya.